ASEAN, South Korea explore new initiatives to deepen trade ties. And also US backs United Nations despite criticism. Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Brendan Nepal. ASEAN and South Korea are exploring new initiatives to strengthen their trade and investments relations. Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz said ASEAN and South Korea have discussed three primary issues, including the upgrading of the ASEAN-Korea Free Trade Agreement during the 22nd ASEAN Republic of Korea consultation today.
The upgrade of the ASEAN-Korea FTA. So we have agreed that we finalize the scoping and so that we can announce masa leadership when the leaders meet in October of the upgrade of the ASEAN-Korea FTA. At the same time, we talk about economic cooperation. We talk in the area of supply chain. We talk about areas of semiconductor. We talk about areas where we can do exchange of trade officials also.
Besides that, he also mentioned that they discussed about geoeconomics to increase areas in trade and investment. During his opening remark, he said ASEAN, Republic of Korea Comprehensive Strategic Partnership in October last year has ushered in a new era in the relations of both countries, and the framework provides the direction to work more closely in emerging areas such as digital economy, green transition and resilient supply chains. Meanwhile, more opportunities are being created for innovators, creators and enterprises, especially micro, small and medium enterprises, through ASEAN's collaboration with the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. Various initiatives provided are believed to be capable of strengthening economic development based on intangible assets.
Economy that thrives on intangible assets. Today's agenda focuses on building on this momentum. We will discuss the scaling of activities under the ASEAN-WIPO partnership, the development of the ASEAN IPR Action Plan 2026-2030, and the launch of the Geographical Indication Database of the ASEAN IP Register. These initiatives will not only foster innovation ecosystems across the region, but also strengthens ASEAN's identity and global competitiveness.
He stated this in his opening speech at the consultation session of the ASEAN Economic Ministers AEM meeting with the Director General of WIPO in the capital. Meanwhile, ASEAN Secretary General Dr. Kau Kim Horn emphasized that ASEAN and WIPO should focus on three main directions, namely harnessing creative and intellectual wealth, empowering businesses, and developing ASEAN talent. The protection of intellectual property IP in Malaysia and ASEAN needs to be expanded to ensure that local products and innovations can compete at the regional level. Deputy Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Liu Chin Tong stated that this initiative is essential for generating income and delivering economic benefits to the nation.
First and foremost,
ASEAN is also expected to gain more cultural recognition and the potential to generate more intellectual property that can be commercialized.
Di mana ASEAN bukan saja mendaftar lebih banyak GI, lebih banyak IP untuk hasil inovasi kita, tetapi wawasan ialah satu hari nanti mungkin ASEAN ada lebih banyak cultural identification, mungkin satu hari semacam ada K-pop, ada ASEAN pop. Kita nak Malaysia bukan saja make in Malaysia, but make by Malaysia, supaya Malaysia mencipta, Malaysia berinovasi.
He added that industries including semiconductors, engineering processes or any type of innovation must be registered as intellectual property to avoid appropriation by others. He said this after the consultation session of the AEM DG WIPO consultation in Kuala Lumpur. Now, for the latest on today's AEM meeting, we cross over to Vimala Kasturi at MyTech.
Yeah, this morning on day 3, ministers held the AEM WIPO consultation, followed by the 22nd AEM ROK consultation. After this, there will be a working lunch, 28 AEM, plus a 3 consultation and several meetings, including AEM USTR consultation. This meeting aims to strengthen trade and investment ties between Southeast Asia and Washington in a challenging global economic environment. In total, over 20 meetings are being held this week, and this marks the 5th time Malaysia has chaired ASEAN since joining the bloc. Meanwhile, a quick recap from yesterday. At a late evening media conference, International Trade and Industry Minister Datuk Sri Tengku Zafrul announced that key trade deals will be sealed at next month's ASEAN Summit. Among them, the digital economy, framework agreement and upgraded ASEAN trade in goods agreement, the ASEAN-China FTA and the conclusion of the ASEAN-India Trade Inclusion Agreement. He said ASEAN is pushing to deepen economic integration and reviving intra-regional trade amid an increasingly volatile global economy. That's all from my tech. Back to you in the studio.
US President Donald Trump returned to the United Nations with a blistering attack on the world body and America's allies. In his first UN General Assembly speech since returning to office, Trump dismissed climate change as a con job, accused the UN of failing to prevent wars, and warned that mass migration is sending Western nations to hell.
Very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal.
Trump also lashed out at European leaders for recognizing a Palestinian state. In the past week, France, Britain, Canada, Australia and Portugal have all formally recognized a Palestinian state, joining a growing list of countries frustrated with Israel's prolonged offensive and seeking to push forward a 2-state solution. Their actions have further underscored Washington's isolation as one of Israel's few remaining defenders. On Ukraine, he shifted position after meeting President Volodymyr Zelensky, saying he now believes Kyiv can regain all territory seized by Russia. And on climate, Trump doubled down on oil drilling and scrapping green policies.
It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. The carbon footprint is a hoax made up by people with evil intentions, and they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know, the carbon footprint was a big, big thing.
On another note, despite his criticism, Trump assured UN Chief Antonio Guterres that the United States 100% backs the world body.
Great respect. Our country is behind the United Nations 100%. I think the potential of the United Nations is incredible, really incredible. It can do so much, so I'm behind it. I may disagree with it sometimes, but I am so behind it because I think that the potential for peace of this institution is so great.
Washington is the UN's largest contributor, followed by China, accounting for 22% of the core UN budget and 27% of the peacekeeping budget.
thing is, for me, extremely important is that the suffering, the horrible suffering of millions of people in the world can be stopped.
Right.
And we fully appreciate your engagement in that regard.
Thank you very much. It's always an honor to be here.
Meanwhile, Qatar's ruler told world leaders that his country is continuing with its diplomatic efforts to broker an end to the war in Gaza despite Israel's strike on targets in the Gulf country. Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani condemned at the UN Israel's treacherous strike on his country, targeting Hamas leaders in the heart of a Doha residential community where they maintain a liaison office.
لقد انخرطنا في وساطة شاقة لوقف الحرب وضمان تدفق المساعدات الإنسانية وإطلاق سراح الأسرى والمحتجزين، وواجهنا حملات تضليل ضد الجهود التي نبذلها، لكن تلك الحملات لن تثنينا عن مواصلة جهودنا بالشراكة مع جمهورية مصر العربية الشقيقة والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية.
Sheikh Tamim also accused Israel of abandoning the notion of releasing the hostages, highlighting that its goal is to destroy Gaza so that the territory becomes unlivable. Therefore, he said Israel eradicated the basic necessities of human life as a prelude to forcing Gaza residents to emigrate. Qatar, along with Egypt and Washington, had led efforts to broker a comprehensive ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, with several rounds of fruitless diplomacy executed in Doha. Meanwhile, Indonesia is ready to deploy 20,000 troops to help UN peacekeeping efforts. Addressing the Assembly, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto stressed that as one of the largest contributors to UN peacekeeping forces, the Southeast Asian country will continue to serve where peace needs guardians actively.
If and when the United Nations Security Council and this great assembly decide Indonesia is prepared to deploy 20,000 or even more of our sons and daughters to help secure peace in Gaza or elsewhere, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Libya, everywhere when the peace needs to be enforced, peace needs to be guarded, we are ready. We will take our share of the burden.
He added violence cannot be used to answer any political conflict because violence can only beget more violence, urging the UN to take a decisive stance to stop the catastrophe. Meanwhile, there was a heavy security presence outside the United Nations headquarters. The 193-member world body hosts 6 days of speeches by nearly 150 heads of state or government, along with dozens more ministers. The U.S. Secret Service had dismantled a network of sophisticated electronic devices in the New York area that had been used to threaten U.S. government officials as foreign leaders gathered this week for the UN General Assembly. The agency said the devices were concentrated within 56 kilometers of the global meeting of the Assembly. Authorities seized more than 300 SIM servers and 100,000 SIM cards across multiple sites in an operation the agency said represented an imminent threat to its protective operations. Swedish activist Greta Thunberg said symbolic gestures like the recognition of the state of Palestine would lead to nowhere unless they are accompanied by real action, as she sailed aboard a humanitarian flotilla heading to Gaza. In an interview with Reuters, she said states have a legal duty to act, not only to speak up, but to do everything in their power to stop it, ending arms transfers, ending complicity, and applying real pressure.
For example, Sweden, where I'm from, has recognized Palestine for over 10 years. We have had a Palestinian embassy, and we are still complicit in this genocide, financially, politically, and military-wise supporting Israel in this genocide, which makes us complicit.
The global Sumut flotilla, meanwhile, was located south of Greece at the time of the interview. The flotilla had left Barcelona on 31st August before stopping in Tunisia, when one of its main boats was struck by a drone at a port. Thunberg said the flotilla had been monitored by drones daily since then.
Drones flying above us every night. But for Palestinians, especially in Gaza, those drones are dropping bombs constantly. So this mission is about Gaza. This mission is not about us. No risks that we could take could even come close to the risks that Palestinians are facing every day, especially the journalists and those who are trying to report from the ground, who are every day risking their lives just to communicate the reality.
In June, the Swedish campaigner tried unsuccessfully to break Israel's long-standing naval blockade of Gaza by sailing to the territory with other activists. Israeli forces seized their small aid ship and they were deported from Israel. Still ahead, Iran meets Europeans but no breakthrough on nuclear sanctions. Stay tuned. European powers seeking to soon reimpose tough sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program met with Tehran's top diplomat, but there were no signs of compromise. There was, however, an agreement to continue talks as the clock ticks on the reimposition of deep sanctions on Iran's economy, even as Iran's supreme leader resisted European pressure. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met in New York with his counterparts from the three European powers as well as EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul said the chances of reaching a diplomatic solution before the sanctions go into effect are slim. French President Emmanuel Macron, meanwhile, said he would meet with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian today to pursue a deal, but warned that Iran must make a gesture or sanctions will have to be imposed. Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei said the Islamic Republic would not give in to pressure to abandon its enrichment of uranium. Araghchi has until the end of Saturday to reach a deal with his British, French, German and EU counterparts to avoid the reinstatement of UN sanctions, which had been suspended under a deal signed in 2025. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said his country is in talks with a U.S. trade representative to reduce tariffs levied by U.S. President Donald Trump after telling world leaders that trade is now being used as a weapon. Trump in August imposed a 30% tariff on imports from South Africa after Ramaphosa's government made several unsuccessful attempts to secure a trade agreement.
And also the tariffs that President Trump is seeking to levy on us and has already started to be reduced. And that AGOA treaty should continue. And we are now involved in negotiations with the United States Trade Representative to see the extent to which we can reduce that.
Ramaphosa likened trade to a weapon earlier in the day in remarks delivered at the UN General Assembly. He said geopolitical shocks and unprecedented trade policy volatility are destabilizing the global economy and jeopardizing a critical source of development finance. Ramaphosa also said the African Growth Opportunity Act treaty should continue, a preferential trade deal offering duty-free quota-free access for thousands of products for 32 African nations. Last year, the treaty did not get a vote in Congress. In other news, Super Typhoon Ragasa, the world's most powerful tropical cyclone this year, lashed Hong Kong with hurricane-force winds and torrential rain, while heavy downpours in Taiwan resulted in the deaths of at least 14 people. Since Monday, Taiwan has been hit by the outer rim of Ragasa, which has brought torrential rains to the island. The Taiwan Fire Department said a barrier lake in Taiwan's eastern Hualien County overflowed and sent a wall of water into a town as heavy rains from Ragasa battered the island. The National Fire Agency said its teams are still searching for missing individuals. In Hong Kong, roads were deserted as authorities instructed people to stay indoors, and surging waves crashed over parts of the Asian financial hub's eastern and southern shoreline. Hong Kong issued the typhoon signal 10, its highest warning early today, which urges businesses and transport services to shut down. Authorities had warned of rising sea levels, saying they could be similar to those seen during Typhoon Hato in 2017 and Typhoon Mangkhut in 2018, both of which caused billions of dollars in damage. The government said it had opened 49 temporary shelters in various districts and over 700 people have sought refuge at the facilities. Thousands of anti-government protesters turned out in the Slovak capital to demonstrate against Prime Minister Robert Fico, accusing him of being aligned with Russia and failing on the economy. Some people in the crowd who descended on a square setup with a podium and a giant screen in central Bratislava held signs accusing Fico of being a Trojan horse for Russia. Fico has broken ranks with European allies, setting conditions for agreeing to further sanctions on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. 2 weeks ago, he said Slovakia cannot support more European Union sanctions against Russia until it gets EU proposals to align climate targets with the needs of car makers and heavy industry. Fico temporarily held up the last sanctions package, demanding guarantees against potential losses from a separate EU plan to end all gas and oil imports from Russia from 2028. The protest came on the same day as US President Donald Trump threatened economic measures against Russia in his address to the UN General Assembly, though he said he wanted US allies to take the same steps and derided some European powers for continuing to buy Russian energy despite the war. European Union and the World Health Organization have confirmed the safety of paracetamol during pregnancy, disputing a warning from US President Donald Trump linking the popular pain medication to autism. On Monday, Trump linked autism to childhood vaccine use and the taking of Tylenol by women when pregnant, elevating claims not backed by scientific evidence to the forefront of US health policy. The European Medicines Agency said there was no new evidence that would require changes to the region's current recommendations for the use of paracetamol, known as Tylenol, in the US during pregnancy. It said available evidence has found no link between the use of paracetamol and autism, adding paracetamol could be used during pregnancy when needed, though at the lowest effective dose and frequency. Meanwhile, the WHO noted that evidence of a link remained inconsistent and urged caution in drawing conclusions.
There were some observational studies that have suggested a possible association between prenatal exposure to acetaminophen or paracetamol and autism. But the evidence remains inconsistent. Several studies that have done after that have found no such a relationship. And if the link between acetaminophen and autism were strong, it would likely have been consistently observed across multiple studies.
Moving on to sports, Isak scores first Liverpool goal in League Cup win. Stay tuned. Alexander Isak scored his first goal for Liverpool while Ugo Ekitike was sent off after bagging a late winners as the hosts beat second-tier Southampton 2-1 at Anfield to reach the fourth round of the League Cup. Isak was making his third appearance for Liverpool since his British record £125 million move from Newcastle on transfer deadline day. The 26-year-old had drawn a blank in his debut appearance against Atletico Madrid and also failed to net after coming off the bench for the last 23 minutes of Saturday's Merseyside derby win over Everton. But Isak got off the mark in the 43rd minute as Southampton goalkeeper Alex McCarthy tried a short pass that was intercepted by Federico Chiesa, who picked out the Sweden striker to fire home. Shea Charles equalised for the Championship side in the 76th minute with a close-range finish after a wayward header from Liverpool's Wataru Endo. Arne Slot had made 11 changes from the Everton game, but substitute Ugo Ekitike saved Liverpool's understudies from a penalty shootout when he finished off Chiesa's pass in the 85th minute. The French striker took off his shirt to celebrate and was dismissed for a second bookable offence. Liverpool have made a perfect start to the season with 7 successive wins, including 5 in the Premier League, to take them to the top of the table. Real Madrid maintained their flawless start to the season with a swashbuckling 4-1 victory over Levante as Vinicius Jr. orchestrated the first half demolition before Kylian Mbappe's second half brace sealed a comprehensive win. Vinicius Jr. set the tone with a moment of brilliance in the 28th minute, unleashing a strike from the right side of the box using the outside of his right boot that went in just inside the far post. The Brazilian turned provider 11 minutes later, threading Franco Mastantuono through down the right channel in a lightning-fast counter-attack. The youngster burst into the box and unleashed an unstoppable strike into the top corner from close range to double Madrid's advantage. Levante briefly threatened a comeback when Ivan Romero's 54th minute effort deflected off Dean Herson and lobbed over the wrong-footed Thibaut Courtois, allowing Eta Eyong to hit home the loose ball at the far post. However, Mbappe restored Madrid's 2-goal cushion 9 minutes later, converting from the penalty spot with a cheeky chip down the middle after Levante captain Unai El Ghazabal fouled him in the box. The French forward completed his brace 3 minutes later, collecting Arda Güler's long pass through the middle before rounding the goalkeeper and tapping into an empty net. Elsewhere, Al Ittihad advanced to the round of 16 of the King's Cup with a 1-0 win over Al Wehda. Al Ittihad's only goal came when forward Saleh Al Shehri scored from the mark in the 9th minute. However, the Jeddah-based club dominated throughout, controlling the ball for 64% of the match. Al Ittihad had 8 shots on target compared to 3 by their second division opponents. They were hungry for a second goal throughout the match but were thwarted by Al Wehda goalkeeper Abdullah Al Waisha, who helped hold them to a single goal, which is all they needed to advance in the end. In another match, Al Nassr thrashed Jeddah 4-0 to advance to the round of 16 of the King's Cup. The Riyadh-based side had no problems dismantling their second division opponents even without their star player, Cristiano Ronaldo, who rested on the bench. Al Nassr opened the scoring early in the first half when a boot from Angelo went off for defender and into the net just 8 minutes into play. Second half goals by Wesley, Joao Felix and Mohamed Simikan sealed the home team's defeat as Al Nassr marched to a 4-0 win. That's it from us today. And our top story, ASEAN-South Korea explore new initiatives to deepen trade ties. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and Soluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Brendan Paul, Malaysia Madani, Rakyat, Disantuni. Thank you for watching and take care.